Today we're going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, an American classic poet, writer, and editor. Poe, born in 1809 and died in 1849 at the ripe old age of 40 from a brain lesion, which is possibly believed to be the cause of his erratic behavior as well as beliefs that he was drunk and also or addicted to drugs. Poe had a string of poetry as well as literature. He is noted to be the starter of the short story as well as being of the detective story. Today we're going to go ahead. We will cover two of his poems as well as a brief overview of one of his stories. The poems that we will be discussing are The Raven and then Annabelle Lee. The short story is going to be A Telltale Heart. The first poem, of course, The Raven, is probably one of the most well known, and it does definitely pull into the Gothic view. Poe is a very traditional poet. He follows his stanzas are made in exactly that. They're a set meter of lines with a rhyme that follows other rhymes. This is typical to any sort of the traditional poems, which is what you'll hear in your hymnals and mostly of your early Christian music. Christian music started off as poems. Then classical music was then added into the poems. And of course, as I said, this is very, very of his Gothic style that was most noted. And the Raven itself is actually a usually is recognized with death. And an example of this is if there's a flock of crows, which is another black bird, it's called a murder. So, with that, we'll do a quick reading of The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded there, napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as someone gently rapping on my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember. It was a bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished to the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating, entering at my chamber door. 'Tis the late visitor entreating entrance on my chamber door. 'Tis it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," I said, "or ma'am, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came a rapping, and so faintly you came a tapping on my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness, peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams nor mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was broken, and the stillness gave no token, and only words were spoken, was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. As you heard, it has a very ring rhyme thing. Poe is very well known for his tales. All in his poems, he always has some horrible fate befallen some lovely maiden. Um, this is something that starts off from some of his early poems. Annabel Lee, which we'll go into after I talk a little bit about Telltale Heart, which is also goes back to this mixture of both his detective stories as well as his very dark gothic state. Annabel Lee is believed to be actually a poem based on his late wife, Virginia, who was 13 years old when he married her. But this was very common during this time period. If you remember Romeo and Juliet, uh, Juliet was informed that if she at 14 would be considered a old maid. So you have to realize that the age of Marion was much younger then, and especially most people, your life expectancy was so much shorter. Hence, as note with Poe's death of only at 40 years of age. As I mentioned, we then go into the Telltale Heart, which does kind of bring into his whole detective thing. Telltale Heart is definitely a gothic tale, which goes into mentioning about a man who committed a murder. And in his murder, he then dismembers the person and buries him under the floorboard of this house. And the police come when they hear, because they were called from the scream of him killing this person. And all the time he keeps hearing a heartbeat. He keeps hearing the thump, 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 thump. And it's hard to tell if this is actually being a supernatural cause or if it's actually his own conscious feeling that he has actually committed a murder, and now he subconsciously is guilty over and he needs to tell the police. But he finally, of course, end of the story, he confesses, takes him to where the body is. But he uses a lot of his poetry styling in it, as he repeats certain things, certain words over and over again. The thumping of the heart, hearing the thumping, and you'll hear he repeats this multiple times. And then, of course, as I said, the last poem, it was actually published post-mortem. It was after his death that they actually put down Annabel Lee, which is believed to be, as I said, written about his dead wife. And it goes as this. And it also, as I said, traditional poems have a very sing-song. They follow a rhythm, a rhyme, and they are very metered in how they go through. It was many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden lived there, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. but we loved with a love that was more than love. I and my Annabelle Lee, with a love that winged Seraphis of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle Lee. So that her high-born kingsman came and bore her away from me to shut her up in a sepulchre in the kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went inveighing her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in the kingdom by the sea. That was the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, a many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in the heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of my beautiful Annabelle Lee. For moon may never become withdraw without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee, and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life, and my bride, in the sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. This is, as I said, this is a kind of a break from the Gothic style, but this is also is more towards, you can see where he is showing grieving towards a wife that he lost. As I said, Poe was very, very unique in his writing styles. I didn't bring up his actual detective work. We'll discuss that later in a comparison between him and, of course, the later, more well-known Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But as I said, Poe was a very, very genius person. It's curiosity, as I said, is if some of his writing wasn't induced partially by the lesion in his brain, which would explain, because they said that there are times that he was very, very passionate, very open, very caring, then others where he would just completely be a demon from hell when he actually, especially when he is criticizing somebody else's work. So this is where we'll stop today about our discussion on Edgar Allan Poe and take it up on comparing his detective work to that of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.